did show up, so good morning, everybody. There's a great book out there that's the rage among all the priests and parish staffs, and in fact the authors spoke to us at our fall clergy day, and they're coming again to speak to all parish staffs in January if we want to send our staffs to hear about it. The book is called Rebuilt: Awakening the Faithful, Reaching the Lost, Making Church Matter. And it's written by a pastor and a lay pastoral associate of a parish in Timonium, Maryland. And the reason it is so popular right now is evident right in that title, as you can well imagine. Awakening the faithful, reaching the lost, making church matter. That's what it's all about, isn't it? And the two of these men and the staff at Nativity Parish took this dying parish and turned it around. And they did it by realizing that their parish was not a store or a business for people to come to and get what they want from it. Instead, it had to be a community of disciples who really were followers of Christ. The church had to matter to people, had to make a difference. And they found out that when they started catering to the people's needs, they failed. Because that's not what church is about. They couldn't keep up with it. It was impossible. People were just coming as if the church were some kind of a store or a commodity. And so they weren't really invested. One of the stories that he tells that I really like, and I want to share with you, is the story of their Lenten program that they did for 5 years in a row when they started this process of reviving the parish. They would slave over putting these evenings together. And they would do it for 6 weeks in a row. So right after the beginning of Lent, the Friday right after Ash Wednesday, and on they would go. They'd get the speakers for each of the nights. They would prepare food because there was a meal included with it. They would free meal, and they would offer childcare. They would host dinner entertainment and have something for afterwards if people wanted to hang around. They would offer Mass before it and Stations of the Cross if you cared to pray again after it. Hundreds of people attended. Neighboring parishes were picking it up as, wow, this is great, we should do this program as well. And then Father Michael White, the author and the pastor, writes this: "My life changed on one of those Fridays. It was the 6th and final evening, and by the time we got to that point, it always seemed as if we had been doing it forever. It was complete burnout every year for everyone on the staff. Anyway, I was serving the dinner. Yep, that's what I did, serve the dinner. And a lady approached me to complain about the food. The free food. And she was noisy and nasty about it. Really mean. She was quickly joined by a chorus of like-minded people who all wanted to complain about the free," and he capitalizes, F-R-E, "the free food." He says, "Something snapped. Some artery exploded. I knew in an instant that I could no longer do this. I was wasting my time. This was my life, and I was wasting my time. It wasn't just the ingratitude, it was the lack of purpose and the resulting lack of effect. We were working as hard as we could in a non-sustainable way, and it never made any difference. There was never any difference in anyone before or after any of those occasions that we worked on so hard." And I love this last sentence. He goes, "Now I understand why my predecessor," so in other words, the pastor before him who had run the parish kind of into the ground. "Now I understood why my predecessor had a doormat that read, 'Go away.'" Well, so Father had a bad night, but even more than that, we all have bad moments. But in that moment, he realized the important truth that then began the process of his changing Nativity Parish for the better. He had to do things that awakened the people, that reached out to the lost, and that made church matter. And along with all that they did to revive the parish and to reach out to the unchurched, they had to face the issue of what? Paying for it. It was going to cost money. And they found out that just as people misunderstood what parish was all about and wanted it to be like a store they could come to and get what they needed, that they also basically understood what giving to the church is all about. Some gave only to the things that they wanted to see done or that they were involved in. Others said fundraising is the answer. Let's have more fundraisers. Some said develop a need and ask people to give to a need, and then it'll all work out. And they will give. And of course, people will give to a need. And I know sometimes we have to do that for one thing or another. So it's not all bad. But it became the job of the leadership of that parish not only to change what they were doing in that way, but also to change how they explained to people what to give and to let people know that's not what God wants. That's not stewardship. That's consumerism. And it's very different. And so they started to challenge people with true stewardship, just as we've been doing here at SJV since I've been here, with talks and with our program and with our stewardship committee. They reminded people that God doesn't just want us to give a tithe. So typically, you know, the tithe is 10%. Scripturally, that's what it says. Give 10%. Now, they were very strong on this when they did the rebuilding of that parish, because they laid it right on the line. They said, you know what? God just doesn't want to doesn't care about just the tithe. You have to remember, He wants us to recognize Him as the owner of everything we have and to diligently embrace our role as stewards of what we have and hold on His behalf. And eventually, one way or the other, He's taking it all back. Not just 10%. That's only the place to get started. It's all going to go back. That's why we always say, you know, nobody's got a U-Haul attached to the hearse with their casket in it. You can't take it to the grave with you. You can't. All we have is a gift, and it is our duty to use it well and share it. And so with those stories in mind, I'm here today to talk to you about your stewardship and to tell you a bit about how we're using it right here in our little corner of God's vineyard. You all received this in the mail. Although after I've said this, some of you have come to me and said, I didn't get the mailing. So if you didn't, please talk to us. We'll send you some. We still have more of these. But this is our annual report on finances and how we've spent the money and some of the things we've done with time, talent, and treasure. And I'm not going to read it to you, and I can't really summarize it all in the 15 or so minutes that I have with you here now anyway. But I do want to emphasize a few reminders and a few points about it. And I want to say, feel free to call me or to call our Director of Administrative Services with any questions you might have, because we are sincerely trying to be as transparent in our use of your gifts as we possibly can. I insist upon that as your pastor. I want you to know everything that's going on, and I'm very pleased with this report and the thorough description of the facts that it includes for you. As you saw there, we ran a deficit budget last year of $51,156. And you might say, well, that's not so much on a $4.5 million budget. Things happen, so on. But that's fine. But that story doesn't tell us everything. It doesn't tell us that in order to achieve that deficit, we took $200,000 out of our reserves to pay our bills. It also doesn't make clear that in addition to that, we spent $125,000 from Bids for Kids, $121,000 from our new Curé de Ars annual school fund, and $127,000, almost $128,000 from our very successful festival. Folks, that adds up to about $574,000. So in reality, our expenses far exceeded our income, and as a result, our net worth decreased. And indeed, we have some capital expenditures in there that were one-time things that we can explain where the money went, of course. But the point is, I've got a list of more capital expenditures. In a building this size, that never ends. There's always something that needs to be done, fixed, repaired, or replaced. So that list continues. I think you're also aware, if you've been reading the bulletin, if you've been looking at parish council minutes, or if you've just been talking to people, that we passed a budget. The parish council passed a deficit budget of $233,000 for this fiscal year, of which the first quarter has now passed. Again, that's only a 5% deficit on a $4.5 million budget, but it's still a huge warning sign that we have to take a serious look at two things: our spending and our stewardship. And that's why I'm speaking at all the masses this weekend about this. I want to assure you of this, that these numbers that you have been given are most accurate. There's some rumor that we have inaccurate numbers or something is wrong or maybe something's happened. None of that is true. It's an open book. All numbers are accurate. Our former accountant and now the accounting firm that we've hired, the outside accounting firm that's doing our bookkeeping now, have done and are doing an excellent job at recording and accounting for everything properly and setting up our accounting now in QuickBooks. We had Great Plains before. We made that transition, which was difficult and caused some of the problems. So that's been done. And now we have regular monthly reports. We can have confidence that we know where we stand. Our staff and our parish council and its committees get accurate financial reports on a monthly basis and carefully review the expenses so as to stay within the budget. So the heads of each of the departments have that responsibility. What's more, in this first quarter, since we passed that deficit budget, we've looked at the budget again and we've come up with in excess of $120,000 in savings with a few simple things: rebidding and hiring. So we rebid. We got an accounting firm in to do our accounting. We got different company to do our school cleaning and our floors in the school. We got a different company to do our landscaping, and all of that together is $120,000 already. And we're now continuing our careful search for further savings, and I'm confident that we can come through the year with much less than a $233,000 deficit. But that having been said, the second place of a solution to our parish deficit is an honest look at our giving. Each and every one of us has to face what we give, has to look at it, and more than just looking at what we're giving, why are you giving to this church? That's the big question of stewardship. So first of all, I need to thank you all for what you do. You're here. You're engaged. Church matters for you. I'm preaching to the choir. We all know there's that group that gives nothing or close to nothing that we have their names on our roster. We can't depend on that. We can't say, well, let them make up the... No, they're not going to. We have to take ownership of this. We're the ones that are going to make this happen. And so we have to be alert to that, and I know you are, and I thank you for that. And I especially want to thank those who have stepped up their stewardship each year. This year, we had an increase in stewardship of about $17,000 over the previous year. And I'm very grateful to those of you who made that happen. But that's less than a 1% increase. And our expenses increased by 8.7%. And the fact is that over the past several years, expenses have always increased and stewardship has pretty much remained flat. And those expenses have increased because our needs have increased. That's the long and short of it. Our ministry has increased. We have more school staff than before. We have more parish staff and support staff than before. More services for all of you that require employees to make it all happen and to keep up with it all. So here's what I'm asking. Give serious thought, not to the amount that you give, but the percentage. From the book that I've been talking about, Rebuilt, I got the idea of the 4 P's. And they got the idea to put it in the book from another article. I saw the footnote on it. And we took those 4 P's and we actually put them. You also got your 2 forms with the mailing last week or week before. We put those 4 P's right on the commitment form for you so you can review them again when you get home. The traditional 10% tithe is more than many can do. I get that. I understand that. It's a scriptural goal, I see it as. But at least we can enter into the idea behind tithing when we go at it with the 4 Ps. And that means planned givers, priority givers, percentage givers, and progressive givers. And so we need to designate money in our budget for this. Plan it. Then we need to give it priority. So not after I do everything else, see if I can still meet my goal, but at the beginning of the pay period, first thing is the check to my church or the check to my charities. Priority. Percentage givers. So you look at your income and you think of a percentage. What percent am I giving? Not a dollar amount and just picking that out of thin air, but a percentage, and then a progressive giver, increasing that percentage regularly. So if you're already giving a tithe, or even that half tithe, 5% of your income to SJV, 5% of your income to other charities, fine, keep doing that. You're there, you're at the 10%. That's the best we can do for most of us. That's all that's even asked in the scriptures. That's superb. Keep doing it if you can do it and if you're doing it. God bless you. If you're not there yet, as most of us probably aren't, I'd ask you to consider a pledge this time of 5% to 10% more than you are currently giving this year for 2014. 5% to 10% more. So $100 a month gift becomes $105 or $110. So that $5 or $10 in a monthly budget for most of us isn't going to make that much difference. But when we put that all together, it's going to make a huge difference on our stewardship line. And then if you are one of those who is just occasionally putting money in the basket or even in an envelope with no plan whatsoever, please stop that. That's not the way to do it. Give it more serious thought than that. Enter into stewardship. Make the conversion, at least at that level, of the 4 Ps. You know, over these past 5 years, little more than 5 years since I've been with you, I've done everything in my power to regain the confidence of our fiscal management at this parish. It's no secret to anybody that it perhaps had reached an all-time low prior to my arrival, for reasons that we all know. Some newer people maybe don't. It's not the place to go into all of that, but we had to build up the confidence. And a deficit bottom line for 2012, 2013, and a budgeted deficit for this year are disconcerting. And they make some people start to lose that confidence that we've tried to build up. Please don't. There's nothing seriously wrong here. There's just a deficit, and we can adjust it. But because it doesn't mean it has to be this way either. Remember, we have no debt at this parish. We have money in reserve from past years. We have a $1.25 million endowment that we can now draw on for a small income every year, which we've been doing the last 2 years and we'll do again, and also which we can draw on now for scholarships because of the Faith in Our Future program, where we put that money aside for people. It's now an endowment to give grants for mission trip scholarships. We have hundreds and hundreds of people involved in a wide variety of activities and service. We have a top-notch school and religious education programs from K-3 through our grade school, high school, youth ministry, all into adults. Excellent programming. We give 5% of our stewardship income out to other organizations in outreach. Some people said, there was your answer, Father. Pull that, the low-hanging fruit, pick it and get rid of it. You've got 5%. I said, no, that's not right. We don't go after our charity first. I'm asking you not to do that. Why should the parish do that? And some of you would have been very angry with that because you love it, that some of what you give, goes to other charities that are needy and vetted out by us. We're most generous now to Piura, Peru. We've been most generous to our local twinning parish, Prince of Peace. And we're generous to every other appeal that comes in here. People come up here and ask you for money all the time, and they walk away with large sums of money from your generosity and from all the other things that you're asked to give to. There's a generosity here. I know that. We are the envy of many parishes, that are struggling. You know, you and I are only going to give to things that appeal to us or have real meaning for us, right? That's what that book was trying to say too. You know, when I was thinking of giving this talk, I'm like, I better take a look at my own stewardship to this parish, because I can't get up here and ask all of you to do that and not do it myself. You know, I pay the mortgage, the car payment, I buy food, I spend money on entertainment and on vacations, I buy clothes, I give gifts, I put money away for my retirement, I give to charity. But why wouldn't I just trust God enough to tithe 10%? I don't. But why? I thought about that. And then embarrassingly, I started to think what that would mean. And you know what? My car payment comes closer to that than my stewardship. That's embarrassing for me to admit. And I never thought of it that way till I was thinking about all this week. You might have something like that in your life. You could say the same thing about it. And why? Well, I'm afraid, of course. I'm afraid there won't be enough if I do that. There won't be enough for what? Well, there won't be enough for me, right? So, on the other hand, my faith means everything to me. I mean, I'm the pastor of this parish. This parish means everything to me at this point in my life. It's where I work. It's where I worship. It's where my faith is fed. It's where I come to experience Christ along with all of you in community. And the question I should be asking myself is, without this parish, where would I be right now? And a lot of you can ask that same thing and admit it would be bad. And since this place really does have meaning for me, it matters, it does awaken my faith then. And it does allow me to do the work of evangelization that I'm called to do as a priest and as a disciple. So I looked it all over and I decided yesterday, I'm going to increase my stewardship. I'm going to increase it a lot. And I'm asking all of you to prayerfully consider doing the same. Look at it a new way. And if you see me walking to work, you know it didn't work out because they came and got the car. So please, would you look over these materials carefully? I beg you. You've received the financial report, the statement. You received the time and talent offering sheet with the everything listed on the back, and also the one that told what you gave this year and then what you're going to do for 2014. Look it all over very carefully. Come here next weekend prepared to commit. We'd like to do it in church. We'd like to do it in pew. We're going to have more of these forms in the pews and pencils and envelopes, and we'll have somebody come up here after the homily. They'll talk us through it, and then we'll offer it. We'll bring it forward. And you can bring your form completed if you want. I know some are already in the office. You can still participate in it next weekend by just taking a form and writing copy on it or an envelope and just putting in the envelope symbolically. But we want to make a religious event out of it. You're not just paying dues to belong to a club. You're not a customer who doesn't like the food, even if the food is free. But you're a disciple and a child of God who has given you everything and who asks you to give it back proportionately. Some here to this place, which means so much to you, and some perhaps to other charities. And then next weekend we'll have that procession forward. We'll place our gifts before the altar. The priest will perhaps even offer them up a bit as that happens. It's a religious act, and we'll honor it at each Mass. Stewardship is truly a way of life, and it truly is a conversion, and therefore it belongs in church. Of course, if you can't be here, and I want that back anyway, so mail it in. But I think even then, as you seal that envelope and drop it off here, get ready to drop it off at the office or in the mailbox, say a prayer. Hold it up and say a prayer. Thank you, God, for everything. And please, Lord, accept my offering for 2014, my gift back. And God bless you and thank you for taking all of this very seriously, for giving me this time. I know it was long. And remember, we